Today, we are going to be reviewing a resume for Morgan. And before we hop in, I thought I would just give a few key points about how I like to do resume writing, resume review, and where I think some people go wrong in the process. So many people start writing their resume, and I talk to job seekers who do this all the time, who start specifically with going to their resume and modifying their resume, and then they look for positions. You should actually be doing this in the reverse order. You should look at positions, industries, roles that you want to be applying to and get a good overview of what it is that those specific industries, those specific roles are wanting from you, and tailor your resume to that. So you want to flip the script on how you're doing this, because at the end of the day, the goal of the resume is to be an initial signal that yes, you are the right candidate for this position based on your existing skill sets and experience. But the reality is that it's impossible for you to put everything that you've done, every result that you've achieved into one single document. So you have to make some value-based judgment calls about what should actually be there and what you're okay to ditch and not put in. It might be the result that you think is the best, but if it really doesn't advance the ideas of what companies are wanting, and if it doesn't demonstrate the skill sets that companies are wanting, then your really cool result can maybe be the last bullet point, but there may be things that are more important for you to put about the roles that you've had. So that's a huge part of it. And then obviously, I'm going to take a look at, are the basics of the resume correct? So is there any sections that are missing? Is the format of the resume correct? Can I measure this person's impact? And I do that actively using the hiring manager hat. So as a person who hires people all the time, I'm able to look at it with a hiring manager's eyes. Every hiring manager and every recruiter is obviously going to be a little bit different. But in general, when we're looking at a resume, we're wanting to see, does this candidate look like they stack up with the skill sets, and do they potentially have something that'll be exciting for us? So things that we weren't originally thinking about for the role, but could be a really great addition and could help them stand out a little bit in the pack and make us excited about talking to this person when multiple people functionally will have a resume that looks the same. So that's really what we're looking to cultivate at this point. Is the resume should tell a story about who you are as a candidate, and it should tell a story that not only fits the requirements of the job description, but kind of makes you an interesting fit for that particular company or that industry or that particular role, where you're just bringing a little extra spice to the table and a little extra flavor that maybe they didn't necessarily ask for, but now that you're presenting it in front of them, they are potentially really excited about and think it could be a good additional value add. Put it into a Word document because I want to highlight the things that are really important in this particular job description and have a good understanding of how the company is positioning things. And you'll notice once you do this 4, 5, 6 times for different positions that you want to apply to, most companies will be looking for the same set of skills, and you'll be able to pull out a list of key keywords that should appear within your resume. Because the idea is not to replicate every element of the job description onto the resume, because companies aren't looking for someone who's perfect. They want them to meet maybe 85% of the qualifications, but they know that it's highly unlikely that someone's going to hit every single mark. So you just want to put yourself in the top crew of candidates and to be able to move forward for the position, especially at the start, because really that's all that the resume is doing. It's an initial green flag for a company that, oh yes, you're a person that's worth talking to. And that's, in terms of the position summary, this is where I'm going to start highlighting key items in the position. So managing a portfolio of SMB and mid-market customer accounts, act as an ambassador. So this, again, they're essentially telling you that they expect you to be a forward-facing representative of the company. You'll develop a deep understanding of the product suite. Okay, they want optimizing customer experience, lead gen, creating references, and collaborative advocacy. Those are all important. You'll build and maintain relationships with key stakeholders, influencers, primary power users, client engagement, fully leverage our platform. Something that I'm noticing is that they're not really giving you a good sense, Morgan, of what the actual intended outcomes are and how you will be measured in the role. So I'd make sure if you get an interview for this position to ask about that. So they gave a really good detailed overview of some of the key things they're looking for in this position. So relationship management is a big one. Again, their focus on the SMB and mid-market customer accounts. Proactively engaging with customers is one. It's really important. Detailed review of new features addresses more complex churn risks. So I would make sure that you ask them about this as well, Morgan. I would make sure that you ask about this point specifically, some of the more complex churn risks that they have seen, because A, it will show that you read the position description in detail, but B, you also want to have an understanding of where is a company maybe struggling, like what's an average churn risk for them versus some of these more complex ones, and how have they gone about minimizing churn in these more complex ones in the past, because it also helps you to start building a mental catalog for other interviews, as well as for, if you get the position, some things that you might be able to rely on. Customer advocacy and sentiment, obviously an important part of any CSM role. So monitoring detailed metrics, this is important. All right, so communicate status updates and get well plans effectively. Okay. That's a little bit vague. I think an opportunity for you to stand out is to ask some questions specifically at the hiring manager level about how they're currently doing this. And maybe it's a good opportunity for you to introduce the idea of automation into the process, because manual customer updates, which I sort of get the vibe that maybe it's manual updates based on how they phrase this as a key and critical part of the job, always leaves room for problems. So this could be a good way, again, for you to stand out. And more broadly, if you're someone that's watching this and you're trying to figure out where you might be able to create value, thinking through, okay, where am I noticing things that feel like a bit weird or a bit strange, or maybe like they're not being done in the most efficient way, is going to be really important to the overall vibe that you give as a candidate. Because if you can identify places where you can create a compounding set of value beyond what they originally brought to the position, that's how you start to stand out in the pack in an interview. Okay, value attainment and optimization. I love it when companies just use the buzzwords, because this doesn't really mean much. Like, what does it mean to identify a trend? Is this an external trend? Is this an internal trend? I'm assuming that this is an internal customer trend. So for example, let's say customers are asking a lot for AI. This is something that we're facing at work, are increasingly noticing that people want to integrate AI into their coaching. So it might be internal trends, but it might also be external facing trends. So again, I would get some clarity on this piece, but I do think it's good to mention this in the resume. Identifies and recommends training sessions and workshops to optimize product usage and there's like a training function associated with this role. Design and implement customer success strategies, identifying areas of risk and opportunity that I expect to see for a CSM role, and influences company-wide objectives and enhances customer experiences. Yeah, that I would expect. So knowledge, in-depth understanding of customer success strategies, comprehensive knowledge of UKG product suite and updates. You don't need to have that right away. This is a learnable one. And advanced data analytics and trend identification. So Based on what was in there, I'm going to guess that they probably want some level of, at a bare minimum, you being able to understand an Excel spreadsheet. Potentially, they might want some Power BI, some SQL in your skill set. So if you don't have these, Morgan, I would recommend, I wouldn't freak out about it, but I would you start to learn the skill set. I don't think it's a disqualifier, but that being said, it's an increasingly important part of every role that is customer facing, every role that has a management function, that you have some level of data analysis capabilities. So I would recommend in general, not just for Morgan, but for anyone that's listening, to make sure that you're really boning up on your Power BI skills, your SQL skills. If you are wanting a good primer to data analytics, then I recommend the Google Data Analytics certificate that they have. It will put you ahead of most people in terms of your data analysis capability and will help you to stand out a little bit because it's clear that you have done some education to improve your data analytics and your data-driven thinking, which is never a bad thing, right? Companies will never be sad or upset to see that you have proactively done that, and it gives them an expectation for who you are as a candidate. So just a recommendation thinking through this. So managing large and strategic accounts, definitely a skill you want to address. Leading customer success strategy and execution. You're going to want to make sure that that's reflected in the resume. Mentoring and training junior CSMs. Interesting because they never mention that anywhere, but it's here. So you'll want to ask some more about this, Morgan, as well. Advanced problem solving and collaboration. Cool. This they've already talked about. Analytical skills. Again, they're really focused on identifying trends and areas for improvement, which is good because they really are customer focused. Effective communication and advocacy. These are really important because they've mentioned them multiple times. And this is why going through job descriptions is so important. Like, it's been 16 minutes and I still haven't looked at her actual resume. I gave it a quick once over, but we haven't looked at it because in order for you to really understand what companies are looking for in the position and how to position yourself as the best candidate with the right experience for those positions, you have to have a really clear understanding of what is important to the companies. Education, they want a bachelor's degree, 3 to 5 years of experience in customer success, AM, or related roles. That's going to be important. Proven track record of managing large and strategic accounts. Mentoring and training. So again, interesting, right? Because if you're only looking at the qualifications, this mentoring and training of junior team members does not come up until the back half of the position. You can see it's obviously important to them because they've mentioned this in short succession, even though it's not necessarily listed in the responsibilities section. Anytime that they talk about training sessions, it's customer focused. It is not focused internally. So it's really important to read the job description through to the end because you'll constantly get new information as you go through. That they have a focus on identifying customer trends and proposing solutions for those trends in consort with other stakeholders. They have a big focus on training in general, so training both team and external facing customers. They obviously want to reduce churn and make sure that year over year that there's proactive communication about the product, about features, about how to maximize usage if you are a user, and all of those things contribute to the goal of reducing churn, right? And then they want someone who is data driven and able to pick up on those trends and make suggestions about how to move forward. So they don't just want quantitative data. They don't just want the spreadsheet data. They're also going to want some qualitative data, which is really important to understand. And so those are the things. Oh, and the other thing is that they want like large SMB and or mid-market customer accounts. So those are the key things that they are looking for in this role. All right, so let's take a look at Morgan's resume. So Morgan lives in the US, as I said, she's applying for a CSM position. And so I want to actually look at the resume as an overview right now and give some general impressions, and then I'll dial in. So the first thing is it's very obvious that you have a track record of success, but I think that is really getting lost right now in how the information and how the data is being presented. Because as a hiring manager or a recruiter, and you've worked in recruitment, so you know this, time is very limited. And so you want to make it as easy as possible to get a yes for them to keep reading and to be excited about this resume and to be excited to talk to you. So that piece for me is missing. You are a qualified candidate, but my fear with the resume in its current state is that it's not going to get read at the level at which it should get read, because there's a lot of barriers to that happening right now. I do think that the resume is well formatted. It's very clean, very easy to read overall. I'm going to make some suggestions specifically as we go through, but I think the general spirit of the resume and the design of the resume is good. The thing that's really important is going to be more in some of the missing sections and how you're presenting the data, and then some little micro tweaks and adjustments in terms of how it's formatted. So rather than an introduction, I would present this as a summary, and this section can be a lot better. So there's a few things in the resume that I think are really relevant to mention. One is you immediately here in your oldest position on the resume, you manage the largest and most profitable account. You were President's Club award winner, which I don't know what that is, and we'll get into this later, but this sounds important. And you had a 100% personal client retention rate. That's really important, but this is so far back in the resume, and with the way that the resume is structured, I don't think people are going to stick around to actually get to that point, which is very sad, because we obviously want them to see this amazing social proof. So I recommend having a summary section, and the idea is the summary section gives them a high-level overview of who you are as a candidate. Sentence 1, you want to focus on giving them a high-level overview of who you are as a candidate. So that you are an experienced, whatever the title is, experienced client success manager or client success professional, and try and quantify with an adjective. In this case, I would say data-oriented professional, because that was very important in the position, just with X number of years of experience specializing in, or you can say with an aptitude for, and then 2 or 3 of the key pieces in the position. And then sentence 2 and 3, I would focus on some key results and key areas of focus that will make you a very interesting candidate. In the last sentence, I would personally focus on what you're hoping to achieve out of the position, or ways that you're looking to bring your existing skill set to the table while growing, essentially to explain why you're applying for this role specifically. And then underneath that, I would have a section where you put some of your best and most banging social proof about who you are as a candidate right up at the front, because that's going to convince them, oh yes, this is a candidate that I absolutely want to keep reading on this resume. Most people right now will not continue past this introduction, especially given some of what we'll talk about at FI services. They would not move forward beyond that. Your resume would be rejected from the pile in all likelihood. So with that, change up this section. The next thing immediately that should be underneath it should be a skills section. The skills section should be 3 to 4 bullets, and you want to focus on having a bolded sort of overarching idea of the skills. Relationship management was one of the big skills in the position. And then with that, you want to have associated skills. So data analysis is another one that I would put for you that would be really important. So you want to bold those with a colon, and then you want to have a few sub skills that go underneath. So for example, client retention strategies. Under data analysis, you would have identifying trends and patterns in client data. and you can move to experience. I would call it experience rather than work history. So here, my biggest qualm with this is that there's too many bullet points, and I have to get down to bullets 3 and 4 in order to actually get some data-driven numbers. And most people may not look all the way down here. So for example, this can be completely transformed into one bullet, and you want to use what's called the XYZ resume framework. So the way that I like to explain this to my clients is the X is the project. So the X is the what. So did you implement this? Did you lead this change? Did you do this migration? What was the project that you did that was a needle mover project? The next section, the why, is the how. So for example, it's the how for the quantifiable result. So here's the project, here's the how. So did you lead training sessions, which is what you did in this case? Did you work with the vendor? Did you work with the vendor onboarding team? What was it that you actually did? So the high levels of your contribution to that project. And then what was the measurable, tangible outcome of that project for the company? So in this case, it was increasing digital warehouse management efficiency by 60%. So let's put that all together. So migrated the company from manual spreadsheet processing to the Field Pulse field service management system within 30 days, leading employee and warehouse manager trainings on how to use the system and adapt existing SOPs to the new system, resulting in increased digital warehouse management efficiency of 60%. That the wording on the last one is a little bit weird, but you can get a general feeling for what I mean. Any hiring manager is going to look at this and say, okay, yes, this is immediately connected to the position because it shows she's trained people before and she's trained people successfully to get to a better outcome. She's obviously good at helping with technology movement, technology migration, which is definitely going to be a part of this role. She is good at doing these things quickly, so that's a really great skill. She has done this, this, and this, and then it's resulted in this outcome. Super relevant to what it is that we're doing. A lot of your positions or a lot of your bullet points are very vague. So, for example, in the position description, we saw that being conscious of trends and being conscious of ways to reduce churn and identifying areas of problem were really important. So this is a great result, $270,000 in cost savings, but I have no idea what you did, because financial inefficiencies could be a lot of things. The warehouse manager could have been stealing and siphoning money from the account. It could have been that they just didn't have tracking in place. It could have been that they didn't have the right resource ordering and inventory management systems in place. And so they were ordering double what they needed to, right? So I need some clarity around what the project was, what you actually did, in order to get to those changes, because you just said implemented changes. Well, what were those changes? So you audited office and warehouse operations for financial inefficiencies and created improvements in blah, 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 the actual results, resulting in over $270,000 in annual cost savings. So you want to give them a really clear idea of what it is so that in their mind, they can kind of form a picture of you at work for the job. And that's going to be really important. And so you want 3 to 4 bullet points for your positions. And the other thing is with this one, there's really no data-driven metrics here. So I can see that you manage the largest state account within the company. That's really important. This is obviously very high volume, great, but I don't know what happened with that. And especially given that this is a very short tenure position. What was this? Was this a 6-month contract? Was this that this didn't work out? Like, what happened here? So if I don't see as a hiring manager and as a recruiter some evidence that you succeeded, this could red flag you when you're actually a really great candidate and mean that they don't move back further in the resume to actually look at some of the incredible social proof that you have here at Randstad, because they don't understand the impact that you had, and they might think that you didn't really have one and that you were let go or that you were fired because your tenure was so short. The other thing that's real important that I'm not saying on this resume is a one sentence description of what the company is. So, for example, I work at a company that creates apps for creators. So, I would frame it as a $12 million venture backed company that create apps for creators, coaches, and course creators. That way, if someone is trying to figure out what the company does, I haven't put the onus on them to do the research. I've given them a quick overview so that they know and they can say, yeah, okay, this makes sense. And you want to try and leave it so that there's no questions when they're done. Here for bone foam, again, I really have no idea what your actual contribution was and how you drove the bottom line forward. I can see it, obviously, because we're the manager here of sales and analytics. And so that's great because you moved up from an AM to a manager, but I have no idea what you actually did, what you achieved, and I don't know for each position what you achieved. So I would put 3 bullets for this one, 3 bullets for this one, and use that XYZ format, because this is really not going to tell a hiring manager much at this point. Tell me what you actually achieved. That's what I want to see. Again, to my point here earlier, I don't know what the difference was between each of these 3 positions. I don't know what you achieved in each of those different positions. And I can't see, for example, was this something that you did in your last position, in your first position? So you want to make sure that you really have those things spelled out with bullets. The other thing is it's super important that you tell us what the President's Club is, because I noticed that you have a mix of what seems to be more SMBs and larger companies on your resume. And so if you're doing the same thing and you're applying to SMBs now, then an SMB may never have used a recruiting firm before. So for example, I've never worked in companies that have outsourced recruiting. We've always done our recruiting in-house. So I can kind of intuit that the President's Club probably means that you're in the top of the top, but I don't know. And I don't want to have to go and find out as a hiring manager or a recruiter, because I have hundreds of resumes in some cases that I'm going to need to work through. And so make me do as little work as humanly possible. And that is going to be the best path forward. Your education here, very straightforward. In terms of systems, I would not necessarily focus on putting in systems. I think you can integrate it up here, and it's really not the thing that people are going to be most interested in unless there is a very specific requirement that you know a system, in which case you can just make sure that you integrate it into the body of your bullets. The skills are way more important than systems, because it's not the tools that you're using, it's how you're using those tools to produce outcomes. That's what a good hiring manager and recruiter is going to be far more interested in. So overall, I think you have some good bones to this resume. I think the actual formatting is really nice. It does look like you're a very competent professional that has achieved some great things, but I'm having difficulty identifying what those things are, which I think is ultimately doing you a disservice, which is a real shame, because it seems like you're a great candidate that's done a lot. And so I hope that you'll take the feedback and that you'll implement it, and that you will really lead with showing the absolute best and brightest of what you've done.